Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. This is Wendy from Poppy Hill Designs. I also have a store on Etsy called Kaleidoscope Effects, and that's where you can purchase the designs I'll be using today. This collection is called Autumn Witchy Vibes and combines the beautiful colors of autumn with Halloween. Here's a preview of the jewelry I'll be showing you how to make today. So this is the latest downloadable collection that we offer. It's called Autumn Witchy Vibes. It's available on my Etsy store at Kaleidoscope Effects, and I'll put a link in the description box below. So what's included in this collection? You'll get 24 unique designs, and they come as a download, and it's going to be 4 separate sheets. So you'll get them in the circles 25 millimeters. You'll get the circles in the 30 millimeters. You'll get the squares in 25 millimeters and also 30 millimeters. So you've got a nice collection there, and you can print these as many times as you like and make as many pieces of jewelry as you like. So I've done a video about making cabochon jewelry before, and it's probably about 6 years old at this point, but it still gets lots of views. I get nice comments, and I do get a few questions. So in this tutorial, I'm going to try and answer some of those questions and then review some new products that I'm using and a new technique for doing the circle cabochon jewelry. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the questions that I get asked often is what type of paper do I print my designs on and what type of printer. This is the paper that I use. It's a 65 weight or 65 pound or 176 gram weight, 8.5 by 11 paper. And it's a light cardstock. It's got a nice smooth finish, and I do use an inkjet printer. I currently have the Epson ET4760. That's one of those eco-tank printers, which I just love. I find it to be much more economical on ink, and it gives me great results. So hopefully that answers that question. And again, you can use any similar product with these same characteristics. It's not too thick. The glue can adhere to it well, and so does the diamond glaze that I'll be using. So there's that question out of the way. Next, the supplies that we'll need. So let's bring this back onto the table here. And this will be, that's one of the necklaces that I've made previously. And of course, you'll need all your cabochons. So I've got the cabochon and the corresponding pendant tray. I've got those there. And there's lots of different ones you can use. I'll put links to some of the ones that I've used in the past. And I'll be using a cord here to make that into a necklace. I've got some alcohol, just regular rubbing alcohol that I use. I just put it on in a convenient little spray bottle. You'll need a microfiber cloth, E6000 or something similar, some scissors, and I'll be using diamond glaze. Now the product that I had used in my previous video is no longer available, so I've moved over to diamond glaze and it works just as well, and I have had no issues with it, so I do recommend that. And we'll need a couple of little Q-tips here. So what I like to do first is go ahead and clean the cabochons and the pendant trays. And this is where your rubbing alcohol and your Q-tips can come in handy. For the actual cabochon, you need to make sure the back of that is really clean. You need to have that grease-free, lint-free, all the freeze. So I just do a light spritz on this cloth, and then I'm just going to rub that there, move it to a clean part, do that, and then I'll just, oops, didn't mean to throw that. Just leave it upside down and just let that dry. It will dry really quickly. And then I'll do the same with the round one. I don't pay too much attention to the top of the cabochon at this point. I'll take care of that later. Then what I do is the same thing to the pendant trays. So just a little squirt of the alcohol onto a Q-tip, go in there, give that a wipe down, make sure there's no oils in here. And I'll probably do that to the square one, because you want the glue to, get a really good, so you can see how dirty that is. So I'm going to take that, and then we'll let those dry for a few minutes. So next we'll go ahead and choose our designs. So I'm going to be working with the circle ones first of all. So I'm using the 25mm one, and I love this one of the black cat. I happen to have a black cat, so this one with him sitting there and all the autumn leaves falling around him is just beautiful. Now I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but I have already applied the cabochon right on top of that. Now the way I do this is I take my cabochon, and then I take my diamond glaze, and I put just maybe about a couple of drops on here, enough so that it's going to cover the whole image. Then I quickly drop it down on top of the image. So let me show you how that works. So this was a cabochon that I had cleaned previously. And first of all, I'm just going to audition a couple of the images. So let me take this, just move this around. Look how cute that is. Love this witchy one. And these ones here looks like the witch. Actually, this one on the walkway, she's really cute too. Maybe I'll go with that one. Okay, so this is how I do it. Is I take my product, and I'm going to put about that much on there. You do not want to overdo it. Actually, I'll put just a tiny bit more. Okay. Now the other important thing about this is once you press this down, you really don't want to move it too much. That's where you can run into some issues. And you need to have a flat, hard surface. So I'm going to take this, going to put it down on my image, and you can see that it's got rid of all those bubbles. I'm going to apply some light pressure, just like this. And then I'm going to just let that sit and dry for a couple of hours. So that's how you do that one. So that was a revised technique. I've tried a bunch of different things. I find circles to be quite challenging as far as cutting them out and getting a nice even edge. I've tried paper punches. The closest I could get would be a 1-inch paper punch. Sometimes that works, sometimes it's a little big because 25mm is not quite 1 inch. So this was a good compromise, and I've had really good results. But again, you have to act quickly with this one. Once you've placed the cabochon down, do not move it. If you do, the paper may be a little bit soft, and that's where you can run into some issues. So just let it dry for, it depends on your climate, but I would say a minimum of an hour. If you can let it sit longer, that would probably be more preferable. So now let's make one using the 25mm square designs. So you can see lots of different choices here. So I've already done this one, and I've done this one in a circle. So I'm going to choose, skulls. I know it's kind of strange, but they are quite popular. And so in this particular design, I've got the skull, and it's got all the autumn leaves coming out of it. So as I audition this with the cabochon, you can see that looks quite good. That would be really good for Halloween. I also have some ones down here that it's a skull sitting on top of a book of spells and has more of an ornate headband around it. So I'm deciding which ones I want to do here. And I think I'm going for this one. So for the squares, you can certainly use that same technique that I just showed you with the circles. However, if we look at the pendant tray, you can see that's got the nice squared corners, and the cabochons have a rounded corner. So if you use that same technique, I probably wouldn't cut the rounded corner. I would probably just do it straight all the way around. But for today's tutorial, I'm just going to cut out that square and do it that way. So let me do that. Just get my scissors. Be cutting out two at the same time here. Of course, straight lines are a lot easier to cut, and you can do this with a craft knife also. I'm going to do that and that. So that was fairly easy. And then we'll bring the pendant tray back in here. I'm just going to double check that that fits in there right and fits in there perfect. So this was the way that I had done them previously. So let me bring the camera in a little bit closer. And we'll get this into the square here. I'm doing this backwards, so it does look a bit strange. So that's what that would look like. Now, what I do at this point is, this is the pendant tray that I cleaned, so I know that that's good to go, is I take the E6000 and I'm going to put a few dabs of this in there. Now, you don't want a lot of this product, okay? And you want to just smear it around just like that, okay? I've actually got a little bit too much on here. I think I'm ready for a new tube of this. It's looking a bit worn. And then I'll go ahead and place the design in here. And I'm going to press that down. And let me get myself a clean Q-tip. I'm just going to make sure that that is all pressed down, just like that. And then I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes. Because the trick to this type of jewelry is you don't want the paper to get soggy. That can lead to the inks bleeding. You can get some blistering or separation in the paper. So you definitely don't want that. And that's why I do recommend that lightweight cardstock. So make sure that you give your images time to dry in between the different steps. So I'm going to I've got some excess glue here and get rid of that. All right, so I'll set this aside and let that dry. Okay, so while that one is curing, we'll go ahead and finish up the kitty one. So I've cut away the excess paper from the sheet, and this is what this looks like. So this was that technique I showed you in the beginning, where you place the diamond glaze on the back of the cabochon and then place it on top of the image. So that has been curing, or I let this sit for about 3 hours. So all I'm going to do at this point, you could use a craft knife or a pair of scissors. So I'm going to just cut as close to the edge of this circle as possible. All right, so it's not going to take too long. May have to do a little bit extra trimming. We'll see here in just a second. All right, so I've removed that. Now let me see if it fits in the pendant tray. Looks like I need to just take a little bit off the top here. And maybe a craft knife would be good at this point. See, look at that, that's perfect. So I can run that against the edge of the cabochon. And get that done. And that looks pretty good. Okay, try one more time, make sure that fits in there. And it fits in there perfectly. So now what I'm going to do is go back to the glue. And put a few more dabs of this in. Again, you don't really want this oozing too much out the sides, so spread it around as even as you can. Then I'm going to take the cabochon, pop it in here, make sure that I've got it nice and even. I want it to line up, the alignment to be perfect. And that is in there. So I don't have any excess glue. Make sure you don't get any on the top of the cabochon because that's really difficult to get off. So that one is in place. I know it's going to be difficult to see, but I'll do a close-up at the end and you should be able to see this a little bit better. All right, so that's that one taken care of. So next we'll go back to this one that's been curing for a while. So this has been about 20 minutes on this one, and I'm pretty sure it's dry. I mean, that glue is not very wet anyway, so we shouldn't have an issue with that. So let's go ahead and put this cabochon on, and I'm going to give this a quick clean again because I've moved it around a few times. So we'll go back to the diamond glaze, and I'm going to fill, maybe, I like to start from the center, and I would probably say, what is that, the size of, okay, I probably wouldn't do much more than this. Don't worry too much about bubbles, they will disappear once you put the cabochon on top. All right, so here we go. Going to drop that on, and I could tell that was just the perfect amount. And again, once that is placed, do not, a little bit here on the edge, I'm sorry, here, let's get that, rid of that. But once you have placed that cabochon on top of the image, try not to move it again. All right, that looks really good. It's difficult to see on the camera, but I don't want to move it too much. The colors are just really popping, and then of course the cabochon, magnifies the image. So we're going to let those set aside and cure or dry, and then I'll be back here in a second and I'll show you the finished designs. So all the projects have had time to cure. It's been about a couple of hours, and I've added cording for the necklace part, and then I had a silver chain here. Now this one is the 30mm. I wasn't sure that I had a cabochon and a setting, but I did, and I think that works beautifully for this particular design. So that gives you a little bit of contrast in the 25 to 30mm designs. So here is the cat one that we started off with, and that's when I showed you how to glue the cabochon directly onto the print, let it dry, then cut it out and glue it into the pendant setting. This one, the skull with the autumn leaves around it, which is just adorable. That one we did in the traditional way, where you cut it out, glued it into the pendant tray, then added the cabochon on top. Either way works well, just whatever your preference is. I find that circles can be a bit problematic, and that was why I wanted to show you that technique. So here is the other one that I glued onto the print and then placed it into the pendant tray. Absolutely love this one. And then I wasn't sure that I had a suitable 30mm pendant tray, but I did, and this image looks fantastic in this particular setting. And then I did a warlock, and this was the original one that I had done, and this one I did about 3, maybe 4 days ago. So everything looks really good. It's all dried well. I don't have any blemishes on anything. It just looks perfect. So that concludes today's video tutorial. I hope that you found it informative. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. I'll also list the materials that I used in today's tutorial including the pendant settings, the cabochons, the glues, and of course where you can purchase these designs. If you haven't already subscribed, I hope you choose to do so. And until next time, thanks for watching and happy crafting!